This is the first entry in a series of videos analysing and reflecting on my major sports project. So that compromises of my 20-minute feature-length interview, which I did with Mark O'Brien, a coach in Newport County, and then my 5 to 6 minute short film, which I have done on the grounds team at Worcestershire County Cricket Club and how they deal with the annual flooding that is suffered there. So I'll talk first in this video about my interview and then do a separate video on my short film. So to start off with, I organised this interview with Mark because, as per the proposal that we did, I had said that I was going to do it with Jane Ludlow, but based on the feedback that I received from Julie and John, I decided to take a different route, and I had a connection with Mark through my work placement at Newport. So I got in contact with him. It actually took quite a while from Mark agreeing to do the interview to actually fixing a time to do it. It was actually 2 weeks in the end. So going forward, that's something that I definitely, as I reflect on it, that's something that I definitely need to improve, is my communication. Now, it wasn't my fault necessarily that it took 2 weeks to get the interview done, but I should perhaps been a bit stronger in my communication with Mark to try and fix a time sooner, because the problem was trying to find a time where he was available, and also his speed of replying was a bit of a problem. And then when it came to actually organising the interview, we'd agreed a day and a time, but when it came to it, it was quite clear that Mark didn't have much time to hang around before or after, which rushed the process a little bit and led to a couple of problems, which I'll come on to further down the line. So moving on to the interview itself, in terms of how we set it up, we had one camera fixed on Mark and then a wide shot of the two of us. We had problems with the microphones on the day, so we were using a Rode Wireless kit. Only one of the microphones would connect, so we ended up giving that to Mark, leaving me without a microphone, and in hindsight, that does look pretty terrible. Lucky enough, the microphone picks up my questions, but it's quite glaring in the way that Mark's audio is a lot crisper, and it's very clear that I don't have a microphone on, not in the least because he is holding the microphone and I'm not holding anything. So in terms of the optics, that is quite a glaring issue. The other problem that we encountered was Mark was wearing a cap, and when we set the shot up originally, that was not a problem. It wasn't obstructing anything. But shortly before we began, he sort of moved around to the side a little, and that meant that part of his face was obscured for most of the interview, especially on the second angle, which was sort of looking down from above. So that was a problem, and not something that we realised until after. So in hindsight, I think the easiest thing to do would have been to have asked him to take his cap off. But because we were sort of rushing about, it wasn't something that came to the forefront of my mind. So I think next time, if I do something like this again, I need to be a bit more adaptable and prepared for something to go wrong. The other gripe I had with it was the location. So I'd envisaged, and I'd said this to Mark, to have either done it in one of the stands or in the dugout. And we ended up doing it in a box, which was his sort of recommendation. And that box didn't actually have any kind of branding that showed that we were at Rodney Parade. I hope the location would play a big part in this. I did my piece to camera before and after on pitch side, so it was clear that we were at Rodney Parade, but it wasn't clear from the interview itself. So there are quite a few things that I wasn't pleased with when it came to it. And in hindsight, that's not something that could have been fixed editorially. That's something that I should have just sort of been more aware of on the day. When it came to the actual interview, I knew that it was going to be a good interview because I'd done my research before and watched previous interviews with Mark, which helped me to form my questions. Mark's story is really interesting. I decided to take the route of going chronologically throughout his football career. I thought that would be the easiest way of doing it to prevent anything getting muddled up. And I think in terms of the answers he gave, he didn't sort of waffle at any point. Everything that he said was really interesting. And I think it flowed quite nicely. I feel like I kept it moving along quite well with my questions, which I was really happy with. And I asked him a mix of sort of positive and more negative questions. So I asked him about making his debut at the age of 16, having role models, but then talked to him, of course, about his open heart surgery and also the really difficult time that he endured at Luton. And then finished on a sort of more reflective note of talking about the future and what his future at Newport looks like. So with the actual content of the interview, I was really pleased. The actually one more problem is that we didn't get to do any GVs with him. That was down to him very clearly not wanting to stick around after. Fortunately, I have throughout the season and the course of my placement captured a large amount of footage of Mark actually in action in his coaching role. So I anticipate I'll be able to use that as B-roll and GVs. So overall, I think I should be able to make a good job of this. I think the content of the interview is more than enough to make it interesting. Of course, there are a couple of gripes that I talked about there, but there might be something I can do about that editorially. Mark's audio is fine. With the use of subtitles, I think mine will be rescuable. So there's a lot that I would have changed if I was to do it again. Some things that were out of my control. But I think this has definitely been a bit of a learning curve in a really good way. So we'll see once I finish the editing process what that looks like.